Hey, my name is Matt Littrell, and I graciously was given the opportunity to tune into Maximilian Alvarez's Working People podcast. And it's an honor to be here. I've, done several podcasts covering our campaign, but, this is for all the people who have been following our campaign and want to know what's going on the inside and what has happened since I've got fired from Amazon on Friday, 10 minutes into my shift. And normally about this time, I'd be going to work. So it's a change to adapt to. It flips around your whole schedule on its head, and then you're worried about the people on the inside that are organizing without as much guidance.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Working People, a podcast about the lives, jobs, dreams, and struggles of the working class today. Brought to you in partnership with In These Times magazine and the Real News Network, produced by Jules Taylor, and made possible by the support of listeners like you. So as y'all heard, we've got an urgent mini cast for y'all today. This was not something that we had scheduled in, our episode release schedule for the rest of the month, but we got the horrible news this weekend that Matt Littrell there in Kentucky. Matt has been working at Amazon in Kentucky. Matt has been working to organize a chapter of the Amazon Labor Union in Kentucky, and he is very bravely and vocally, right, been letting us on social media know about that organizing, speaking up about the injustices that he and his fellow workers at Amazon have been facing, and I guess we should expect nothing less and nothing more from Amazon at this point. And I suppose we shouldn't be surprised given how many pro-union workers Amazon has fired or illegally retaliated against for engaging in protected concerted activity. Again, for everyone listening, engaging in organizing your workplace, refusing unsafe working conditions, talking to your coworkers about wages and safety and all that stuff, that is protected activity that your boss legally cannot retaliate against you for. And yet, companies like Amazon, companies like Starbucks, Chipotle, the list goes on, keep doing that. And the latest news is that Matt himself was let go on Friday. We're recording this on Monday, August 22nd. Matt was fired 3 days ago, 10 minutes into his shift. And so we wanted to get Matt on to sort of give us a bit of a rundown of the situation over there in Kentucky, to talk to us a bit about the organizing that he's been involved with there over in Kentucky, to talk about the retaliation that he's faced, and, most importantly, to let our listeners know what they can do to show support for him and his fellow workers right now. And so, Matt, I'm really, really grateful to you for taking the time to chat with me at such an awful moment, and I just wanted to send all our love and solidarity to you from Baltimore and say that we are with you, and we're going to do what we can to spread the word on this end. And so I guess before we talk about the firing, I was wondering if for folks who have maybe listened to our episodes with Amazon Labor Union folks in Staten Island or Amazon workers in Alabama and Texas, but maybe, haven't been following what's been going on over in your neck of the woods. I was wondering if you could just sort of tell listeners a little more about yourself, how you came to work at Amazon, what that work has looked like in the Kentucky warehouse that you've been working at, and how you got into organizing there at Amazon.
Yeah. So, just to start in sort of order, I came to work at Amazon. I got fed up with my last employer. They were honestly pretty bad, but one of the good aspects of it I came to appreciate was the fact that if I did my work and made my quota and I showed up on time and all that good stuff, I knew that I had a job the next day. But at Amazon, they just completely strip you of that job security. And so, in the beginning, I thought Amazon would be a good place to work. It was a employer that likes to market itself as progressive. We all know that that is not true. And in the beginning of my job at Amazon, it doesn't wear you out at the start. It takes quite a while before it starts to get to you. So you just sort of go through the motions for a while. You work your way up from being a temp up to being a full-time associate, and you feel good about yourself. You feel like you made an accomplishment until you realize, hey, the temp agency, they got sued for wage theft. Well, there's red flag number one. Integrity Staffing has all these class action lawsuits against them, and after they get removed from Amazon's service, they don't even notify anybody of the settlement. They just kind of pull the rug out from under you. That's one of the first things that started making me think, this ain't all it's cracked up to be. And then I started noticing how hard I had to work to become a full-time person when people around me are being hired full-time off the bat. And they get a lot more job security. They get access to all of the benefits right away. I noticed that equality, and I noticed that I was working 40 hours a week. So what gives? I should be an equal, and then I should have job security. If I wanted to take a seasonal position, then it wouldn't have been at Amazon. I was looking for a job that I could stay at. If I wanted a temporary gig, I would have went to DoorDash or something like that. Which, a lot of people that are there, they don't have many options in the first place. But so all of these inequities that I started noticing around me, and then I started seeing all of these unions, all of these grassroots campaigns, like over at JFK 8. I saw that, and I saw that they were trying to do something about it. I saw that, they've had a bunch of workers who have woke up to the fact that management will not fix these issues just because you ask them to, or necessarily because you organize a walkout or any kind of strike like that. You would see that with Amazonians United sometimes. They would win something, and then it would be taken away soon after. So I knew that if we were going to collectivize, we would need to do it in a fashion where what we win cannot be taken away. Where even though it's more of a struggle, it's worth it in the end if everybody does get that contract. It's worth it in the end if you inspire people all over the place to start doing the same thing. And then unions get to set the standards once again. I mean, there's a company like Amazon that set the standards for a lot of the places and all of the other businesses around it, and also set the standard for Campbellsville. Campbellsville being basically a company town. And the people here, I realized, to concentrate locally and to concentrate on the rest of the areas in Kentucky, they all need help. They all need to have that representation and have the means to represent themselves.
And just to clarify for listeners, like over there where you are, we talking a fulfillment center? Like, could you give folks a little bit of a sense of how big this facility is and the kind of work that you were doing there?
It's really not a massive facility. For the time in 1999 when it was built, it was pretty big. Um, Amazon inherited the old fruit of the Loom warehouse. They already had a modern warehouse there, modern for that time. And they just sort of added all of their own additions and said that's that. It's a legacy site. They do not invest anything into it anymore. Just minor improvements they did over the years. So as a picker, a packer, a stower, without the robotics technology, everything is a lot more manual. So as a picker, I'm walking about 20 miles a night just to do my job, getting sent from one area to grab a certain number of items, having to wrestle with the bins that the items are in, having to search for that, having to deal with various factors, and the least of it is not the wear and tear it does to your feet, moving around that much, everywhere on concrete, moving up and down stairs all night long. And it's even worse for some of the other departments, like the stowers. They have a very high rates that they have to maintain. And if they beyond, like if they fall behind on their rate, they start getting disciplined. And at least the picker, you get to move from one area that might be hotter to an area that is cooler, and the fact that you're moving and sort of generating generating a little breeze with your movements, in an area that has no fans, a stower would have to be there all night long, trying to navigate the limited space that they have. And so, in order to make great, Amazon even takes their dignity away by forcing them to overstuff these bins, putting too many items where there's not a capacity for them to be there. So the stowers have to create a hazard for the other workers. And Amazon blames it on them when they simply don't move those people around enough in the first place, like they're supposed to do, leaving them in the sweltering conditions. I mean, there's no wonder, why Amazon associates have, as terrible as it is, off themselves at the warehouses in the past. I can just see why people feel like that sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really, I don't know. I know that we cover Amazon a lot, not just us here on Working People or at the Real News Network. I mean, it's, Bessemer really, I think, blew the doors open, but, we'd been hearing these horror stories for a number of years. And we've just kept hearing them, the more that folks like yourself have been raising the alarm and doing what you can to organize, at Amazon facilities. But, I don't know. It's almost like we can sort of like internalize that and sort of get used to it. But I just want to underscore that none of this is shit that we should get used to or accept as an inevitability, because what we're talking about are inhumane working conditions that human beings are subjected to. And those conditions, as we've seen time and time again, they chew up and spit workers out when they have nothing left to give. They break people's bodies. Remember, listeners, that we had, Alicia Johnson on recently. She was an Amazon worker in the fulfillment center in Staten Island. She had a medical issue. Her leg was swollen to the point where she couldn't walk. She asked for accommodation and she was fired. And then Amazon afterwards, basically stonewalled her so that she couldn't get the papers she needed to collect unemployment. right? And that's just torture, right? That is not how you treat a person. And so when we scream about this, when we yell about this, when we curse about this, it's because this is an inhumane situation that people are being subjected to on a daily basis around the country and beyond. And, frankly, Amazon doesn't really seem to be doing a whole hell of a lot to address that. They just keep churning through workers. And when someone like Matt speaks up, they fire them and they retaliate against them. They silence them. And that's just not fucking okay. And I just really want to emphasize for people, even though you may have heard stories like this before, please don't allow yourself to complacently receive it and accept that this is just how things are and are going to be. And, enough sermonizing from me. But Matt, I wanted to ask about one thing before we talk about the organizing and the firing. You said something that I thought was really important, where you said where you are, it basically feels like a company town. And of course, Kentucky has some really horrifying experience with such things, going back to the coal baron days. Can you say a little more about what you mean by that?
So this place, it was a company town even before Amazon. And so the last major place that was here for generations, it was called Fruit of the Loom. They actually started down here. They started in somebody's basement, just sewing underwear together. And you had generations of people, and as that company grew, they were actually, somewhat fairly equitable, and they were distributing things to these people a little bit more fairly than even Amazon is today. So people were earning a middle class income for generations in this small town where the cost of living is low. If it's 1970 and you're making $15 an hour, wow, that's good on you right there. Even in the 90s, if the cost of living is low and you're making that little bit of money, then hey, that's that middle class lifestyle, and you have such a chance to get savings, right? And so people became reliant on that over those years. They didn't exactly have Fruit of the Loom dollars they were exchanging, but all of the business interests and everything, the local government in Campbellsville came to be reliant on that one factory. And they paid their taxes unlike Amazon. They made all kinds of donations to the community. And so when NAFTA came about, that company decided to leave. And so you had a big vacuum. You had people going from a middle class lifestyle to poverty very quickly. You had the most foreclosures that this town had ever seen. And Amazon was in its beginning stages. It was scouting out places that would give them the most incentives. And Kentucky had a program that offered any businesses, instead of just don't pay taxes. In Campbellsville, what they did was they offered Amazon, if you come here, not only will we pick this warehouse out for you, we will give you 5% of the workers' wages that we collect in taxes. We will give that back to you to set up here. And come here, pay $7.50 an hour in 1999. People remember Bezos, McKinsey, Scott, they were here. People that were here since the doors were opened worked for those people, worked for the man himself directly. And when you're a part of a startup, even being a part of a startup union, it's purposeful. So being a part of a startup company is also purposeful, right? And they felt like they were a big part of Amazon's success throughout the years, until it became a lot less important in Amazon's operations. Then Amazon stopped investing in it. And they had to deal with these horrible working conditions And Amazon gaslights us today over the slight improvement of those working conditions. So it used to be, a horror story. You would have people collapsing of heat stroke every day, and the ambulance would be overwhelmed trying to take care of them. And you didn't have the water coolers, you didn't have any type of fans, ventilation, HVAC. They have HVAC in some areas and it barely works because over in the corporate headquarters, that's where they control your temperature that your facility is allowed to be in. Your management doesn't even get to regulate that. And so we're gaslighted all the time. It's the gratitude gaslighting. So it doesn't work on people that started there later, but it works on the old folks. Hey, do you remember when it used to be 100 degrees, they say. And then they'll say, now we take the temperatures and it's only 75. It doesn't get above 75. But with the union and our solidarity, we have people who bring their own thermometers in and measure the temperatures, not next to the vent, but between the aisles where people have to work. And you get temperatures as high as 85 degrees, especially during the summer. 90 degrees. We have people that have detected temperatures as hot as 100 degrees at the top of the facilities, so like the highest floors where the heat rises up to. And so they do the double speak. They speak out of both sides of their mouth. They will say, it doesn't get above 75 degrees in here, but since you're complaining, we're going to put some fans up. We're going to work on getting some more fans up. And that's the point where it becomes easy, I feel, to become apathetic and desensitized to the working conditions, is because you constantly hear, we're working on it. We're working on it. And then they'll tell you, oh, well, no, there's no problem here. There's no problem, but we're working on it. It's the weirdest shit. Like, anybody who's encountered that sort of double speak, it's unreal. And it would have been very easy for me to have became apathetic if I just didn't have a heart, because I was on the safety committee and I was also on the other safety program we have, GIMBA. So in either way, you get to survey associates, collect their problems, their safety issues, process-related concerns, and you relay that feedback onto management, and they're supposed to come up with an action plan to fix it. Well, you go up to them and you have your meeting, you give your presentation, they work out an action plan, they tell you, this is the timeline. Well, the timeline passes and it hasn't been done. You give them a reminder and they still don't do it. You give them a reminder that people are even becoming more agitated about this, and they didn't do it. One of the shop floor actions I would like to highlight that we've done is towards the beginning of 2022, they decided they were going to roll out a mandatory safety shoe policy, which would force you to wear steel or composite toe shoes. And the only way to get the approved shoes, like for sure approved, is to go buy them on Zappos. Zappos is owned by Amazon. And when they have employees going and buying their own shoes, they provide like a little $110 credit for it. But then you get on there and you can't find your size. You might have to buy several sizes up to find a shoe that might be decently comfortable otherwise. To highlight all of the issues you would have with trying to get something that fits, and then, well, you might have to go and buy shoes somewhere else, and they will not reimburse that expense. An example of some hypocrisy. The IRS would let them list a pizza party as a workplace benefit if they gave it out enough. And so they market policies as being for your safety when instead they do more harm than good. If you're a picker and there's no real risk for you to injure your feet, or even if you're a stower, there's no real risk of that in a fulfillment center that doesn't have heavy items, then that's pointless and it's going to hurt your feet. It's going to leave blisters. There's a TikToker from Illinois. His name is Drew Dazinskas, and he makes these Amazon unofficial policy and Amazon official policy videos. He's an organizer out there. And he highlighted the safety shoes, and he was showing people, what his feet look like a day after walking around in those all night, picking for 10 hours. And so people were very pissed off about this policy in the beginning. And we collected that feedback and got people agitated. Like they were already agitated, but you got them, encouraged them to be confrontational with management. Enough people did that they decided to delay the policy. And that's one thing that solidarity can achieve right there.
Hell yeah. No, I mean, I think and that's why, again, it's so important that folks like you and others, whether it be on TikTok or Twitter or Facebook, are letting us know about this at frankly, great risk to yourselves. Because, otherwise a lot of us wouldn't know what was going on there in the first place. And these details are so important because, like, what we get is the corporate spin. I mean, Amazon's got more money than God, so they're, just advertising on every major cable network and YouTube channel and whatever the fuck. So, like, it's important that we counteract all of that propaganda and that folks understand what workers like yourself are going through on the shop floor. And I can, really understand your frustration at that constant gaslighting or doublespeak, like you said. There's a great line from that book, The Fantastic Mr. Fox, where Mr. Fox says something like someone's quoting him, and he's like, "I never said that, and you're misquoting me." And so it's like that. It's like they're talking out of both sides of their mouth at the same time. And after a while, you just start to kind of lose your own grip on reality, and that's kind of the point. But I wanted to, because I don't want to keep you too long, but I wanted to sort of ask about that organizing, right? Because you mentioned the actions. One of the earlier actions that you were involved in. And I guess just to give listeners a sense of the timeline here, right? I mentioned, the union drive with the Amazon workers in Bessemer, Alabama. That was with, a union election where workers were voting on whether or not to unionize with the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, the RWDSU. Then, we also, as you mentioned, there are groups like Amazonians United who have been doing a lot of organizing and collective action, even if they are not a formal union. And then, of course, there was, the massive union victory by the independent Amazon Labor Union at the JFK 8 warehouse on Staten Island. So I wanted to ask, if you could just say a little more for listeners, where you and the Kentucky facility sort of fit into all of that. And if you could tell us a little more about what that organizing has entailed and what the response from what you've been hearing from your coworkers and what the response from management has been.
And so that's interesting that you bring that up. And you brought up Amazonians United. I like to remind people at my shop, because I learned this last year sometime whenever I started getting interested in organizing, checking into Amazonians United. And, I had some great mentors from that organization. I had great mentors from the IWW and great people along the way who have just been there for me the whole time, no matter how I was feeling, no matter if I was feeling defeated. And that was an important step. You need that engagement. So I like to remind people that the only reason we have those water coolers and those fans and stuff like that is because Amazonians United was staging a bunch of strikes and shop floor actions. That's why we have it. We don't have it because management is gracious. They only put that stuff in around the time Amazonians United started striking. And I confirmed that with people who have been here for a long time. And that is how you get what you want to some degree. And then you realize, like, maybe you see a site that has a bunch of Amazonians United organizers there, and they get shut down. And then those people are dispersed between different fulfillment centers. So it makes it very hard to organize, but at the same time, they sort of have an opportunity to organize more shops, I suppose. But with Kentucky, we realized that because these facilities are aging, it's going to have to be a multi-fulfillment center approach. It can't just be SDF1. And thankfully, people reached out to us and they started building their committees. I'm not going to ruin the integrity of any of their campaigns by throwing them into the public light while they are, low key at the moment. But that was an important step too, to building that solidarity. So, and how do you get started? That's what a lot of people have on their mind. That's what everybody has on their mind. Well, my way of getting started was attending all of these different trainings through the IWW, the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee. And, the machinists were instrumental in the beginning. When I met the machinist in December, there were a couple organizers from the Grand Lodge. That's their headquarters. And they coached me on this and helped me get a committee built around common demands that we would like to see. We would like to see a starting pay of $20 an hour. We think that is good for our cost of living. That's good to maintain a decent standard of living down here. That's what all the other factories are starting to pay. But Amazon's kept their wages at $15.50, and a little bit more if you're on night shift or any other odd shift that is worse on your body. That is why they pay you for night shift, because it's bad for your body. It's bad for your digestion. It's bad for your sleep, and all of that other stuff. And when they want to hand you the crumbs, you got to fight for more. Without a seat at the table, you are on the menu, as they say. So, we'd also like to see people compensated more. We demand that people get compensated more when they learn how to do new jobs. Right? If you go and learn how to be a packer, and they tell you have to go be a packer now, and you also have to go back to pick whenever we tell you to. Well, you deserve an extra 25 cents an hour for that. And that's what we think is reasonable. We think holding them accountable for our working conditions and our well-being while we're inside the shop is a reasonable demand. They should overhaul their workers' compensation system. They should get AmCare. Everybody's heard about the notorious AmCare. It's a joke among Amazon employees that they will just hand you BioFreeze or an ibuprofen and tell you to go back to work. Or they'll start a workers' compensation process where they make you video call with a doctor who works for the insurance company. So somebody who doesn't even have to be a medical doctor. And all of these absurd things that companies do, we need to hold them to higher standards. And so you begin on identifying the problems, And then you start talking to your coworkers, you listen to them, you listen to what their problems are. And started out with the working class tradition of just talking to somebody else about your problems. In every workplace, there are workers who all they do is talk to each other and they gripe and they gossip. Engage in that a little bit, but make it productive. You empathize with your fellow workers, you take what they're saying to heart, and then, you know, you have them realize why management is not going to do anything about it. You have them realize why management is not their friend. And you identify your own attempts at making change through management and how they've been effective. Then you're going to want to propose a solution. Well, you've already identified that management is not going to fix the problem. So the solution has to be that you get together and start making these demands to improve your workplace. And you get one worker tied in, coming to a meeting, and then you start getting them bringing people into meetings. Don't even mention the word union. Don't do that. Just have your meetings. And then at some point, you're going to build up an organizing committee, strong people, connect with the union, possibly get them interested in your campaign. And then it's time to possibly get cards signed. It's time to start doing those workplace shop floor actions and becoming more militant and confrontational with management. I mean, it has to be organic in every way. If you have somebody showing up outside your workplace, handing out flyers to exhausted employees, that's going in the garbage as soon as they get home. What Chris Smalls did, what works, is providing mutual aid to people, giving them what they need. Food, you can put together clothing drives for people that don't have it. You could get the homeless people that work at your warehouse, give them a place to stay, give people rides to work. And you're building a community at the same time as you're proposing how to take actions.
Well, I think that's, super important for folks to hear. And of course, that's, what you were doing over there at the Amazon facility. And then this past week, we got the word that Amazon was letting you go. So I guess with the time that we have remaining, I was wondering if you could, I guess, just sort of walk us through that. What happened? What have they said? And also, like, where do things stand now? And what can folks out there do to show support for you? Immediate support for you, but also, what folks can do there to support the organizing efforts at Amazon in Kentucky and beyond.
And so when my retaliation started happening, there was a buildup. It usually is. Amazon retaliates in subtle ways, sometimes not so subtle. So I had been getting targeted since April, right after the ALU's victory. And that's when they decided, they're going to have security, watching people a little bit more. That's when they decided they're going to start issuing a lot more write-ups. I had not gotten a write-up in my year and 2 months of employment until April. And, my organizing, I was being very careful. So for them to start doing that, I felt the need to have to go to the press in June. Felt the need to start pressing charges immediately, though. That was advised by the people that I was with, and I got that support. I realized that there's a mechanism there to at least try and give yourself protection. And, you know, when you're getting out of the beginning stages, there becomes a point where the more obvious you make your organizing, the more protection you have, especially if you have media and just regular people coming and putting pressure on Amazon, threatening to boycott them, putting together rallies for workers, having all of these leftist organizations supporting us and supporting Amazon unionizing, Starbucks organizing. That's good. And they need to unite. They need to put together a common purpose. And that purpose needs to be to organize workers, this working class that they praise so much, claim to care about so much. And that support needs to come. That's the support that everybody is looking for right now. And to keep the Democrats away, to keep the neoliberals away from hijacking campaigns. If you're not making management sweat as an organizer, like, and they're not even nervous around you, that's when they're just going to get rid of you. And they brought in some managers that were ex-military and stuff like that. People who are by the book, even if the book is pretty horrible. You know, people that just came in and started treating us like robots. And I really didn't think I was going to be fired for a while. I didn't think they were going to do that. I worked as hard as I could to prevent that from happening, you know. My wife and I working at the facility together, both wanting to keep our jobs, while I'm also having this goal of organizing and keeping the team together and keeping the team doing that. So, yeah, that's rough. You know, 2 days after Albany workers in New York filed for their election, that's when they decided to do this to me. Even though, you know, and they waited a while before they wrote me up, before they gave me this final write-up that I didn't get a chance to defend myself against. They gave it to me 2 weeks after the fact. And that's really odd, isn't it? Because as soon as you fuck up, there's an algorithm that tells you they need to write you up. Why do they wait 2 weeks? What kind of numbers are they fudging? You know, they're in control of the numbers. They're not transparent about it. People don't even know what their productivity goal is. And their productivity goal changes. That's why in New York, they introduced and are trying to get the governor to sign the Warehouse Worker Protection Act that would force companies like Amazon to give you a quota that is achievable and transparent. And that's another thing we want to do here to give people a little bit more job security. Consolidate all of those different paths, all of those different processes, and all of the different goals that go along with them, and make it into one so that people always know. Show people exactly what their rate is. Don't just show them the average. You're not written up based on your average. You know, they don't come after you for that. And it's really devastating. So somebody like the worker you mentioned earlier in Staten Island who was fired, you know, it's horrible. And with certain types of write-ups, they give you some kind of way to justify yourself. Like if it's time off task, they ask you, oh, what were you doing during that time? But if it's production, then you don't get a justification. You just get written up. You don't have any excuses for that. If you were using the bathroom and it was time off task, that was generated in their system and they decided to go after you for that, then, you get to try and justify that. And if it's a bathroom break, they might excuse a certain amount of it. But if you had a low rate and a high time off task at the same time, they can choose to go after you for either one. So if they don't want you to be able to defend yourself, they'll say, okay, you were not productive. And then you'll say, well, I mean, I had some bathroom breaks in between a day, wasn't feeling really well. Had some Taco Bell and it was coming out, or had to drink more because it's hot in here and had to go to the bathroom more, of course. Some employees, they try to hold it and they end up with bladder problems later down the line. All because this company wants to treat you worse than, the school teacher you had in elementary school when you wanted to use the bathroom.
Man, that's a harrowing way to put it, but I think very apt way to put it, right? Because that's really how they are treating folks, like like children, like machines, like people who not adult human beings with agency and dignity. God forbid they do that. And I just wanted to again thank you, man, for coming on and chatting with us and sharing all this with us. And to send love and solidarity to you from where I'm sitting here in Baltimore, and I'm sure everyone listening is sending love and solidarity from where they are. And just before I let you go, I just wanted to ask if you could let folks know about are there any charges that you or others have filed against Amazon? Are there petitions or fundraisers that folks can find? We can link to them in the show notes, but anything that you wanted to plug before we let you go?
Yeah, so we have all kinds of existing ULPs, and those are unfair labor practices. And those charges through the labor board, I am represented by the same people that are representing ALU at large. So I'm in contact with their lawyers, a network of a bunch of law students that are doing that kind of hard work that they have, helping workers before they've even graduated their own schooling. That's an incredible contribution. And yeah, we have a solidarity fund that is for organizing purposes. And then we have my own personal fundraiser that helps me get by and then continue to organize our people, and it helps them organize as well. So if you guys can make a contribution, that would help so much. It's hard to shake things up in a small town like this. I relate so much to figures like Reverend Ryan Brown, who are doing the organizing in the Deep South, and you have to do that in a different fashion than you do to New York, especially if they're small town folks. So it's important that people, they have the peace that they want even while you're organizing. Because a lot of them are reclusive, right? So as Reverend Ryan Brown says, don't quit, organize. And as I like to tell my people, to remind them that organizing necessarily doesn't put you in more danger of losing your job than just being an Amazon employee in the first place. As soon as you get hired at Amazon, they're looking for a reason to fire you. And it's almost inevitable. 150% turnover rate is intentional. Bezos said it himself. He does not want you to stay there long enough to get comfortable in your role. In the mindset of the capitalist, comfortable workers are less productive, and that lowers their profit margins.